This week on the Virtual Skeptics. Bob is cleaning up this town. Eve is high on Shakespeare. And Tim's old and married. I'm your host, Ron Gregory. And that music is too darn loud. I'm sorry for the music.
That's cool.
This is Virtual Skeptics. If you're watching, thank you. We do stuff, and we talk about stuff, and you watch, and we appreciate it. Let me introduce the crew. I'm going to do it in the same order I always do it, because, I just read, and that's pretty much all I'm good at.
We'll get really confused if you change it out, too.
That's true.
That's true. First up, we have Bob Laskowitz, CSI's conspiracy guy, web columnist, blogger for Skeptical Humanities, and the Skepticality contributor. Next up, we have Eve Siebert, editor and blogger at Skeptical Humanities, and contributor to Skepticality and Insight at skeptic.com. And finally, this week, we have Tim Farley, blogger at SkepTools at Insight. And Insight at skeptic.com, and he's back. Skeptical contributor, creator of What's the Harm, former JR fellow, and married man. And
True.
That's right.
Sorry, ladies.
I got a ring.
Look at that. And apparently he's going to get some
it's
kind
a
of alien
space ring,
disease from his
apparently.
ring. Space
Yes,
ring.
it's made of meteorite. That middle part right there is an iron meteorite. You can see the texture to it.
Thank you for sticking it in all of our faces, Tim.
Yep. And then for his honeymoon, he took it to a volcano and threw it in.
Throw it in the volcano, and yes. Okay. There was this little guy there who was like complaining the entire time too. We could go for like 20 minutes.
It was that kind of wedding. It was.
It was totally that kind of wedding. Hi, welcome to the show. We're fooling around, but let's do this. First off, if you're watching and you want to get in on the shenanigans, you can do that in several ways. First off, you can tweet with hashtag Virtual Skeptics. You can. Sorry, I just got a funny tweet. You can comment on the YouTube channel, and you can also use the Q&A app, which I'm going to make sure I'm turning it on right now. Okay, it's on. You should be able to ask questions, the Q&A app, so we can tag them in the video. We do a few things every week, and this is one of them. Act awkwardly. Our other thing we do is we have a trivia question every week.
It's true.
Tim has brought his trivia question back with him from his honeymoon.
Awkwardly is differently than slowly, Eve.
Okay.
My trivia question this week is left over from last week, which we didn't have a show, so I'm going to reuse the trivia question. Last week was we would have been having a show on my birthday, which was, I guess, why we didn't have a show. I wasn't going to be there anyway because I was on my honeymoon. So August 12th is my birthday, and it's other people's birthdays too, like Karen Stoll's know. But there's also a famous psychic whose birthday is August 12th. Who is that? Famous U.S. psychic. Was born the same day as me.
To the year, the same
to
year.
The year, actually. Yep.
To the year, and not the time. We were going to look up the time exactly to see if you guys were born in the same. So, because I was speculating that it would be really easy for this person to do your reading, considering it was so close to her own birthday.
Right. The horoscope should line.
Or his.
Right up.
Yeah. Or guy or man. I am such a dork. Okay, so what else do we do at the beginning of the time? Oh, we have these two screens behind me, which are playing stuff. If you can tell me what they are, I on Twitter or on the YouTube comments or wherever you feel like sharing it. If you send a carrier pigeon, I will probably open the door for it. Yes, please let me know, and I will congratulate your awesomeness. Moving right along. Is there anything I forgot? Because I tend to forget things.
I
No?
think we covered all the bases so far. I think we can have a show now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just stalling so people get an actual few seconds of time of the video they can watch because I really want someone to get this one. Okay then, guess what?
Robots.
Yes,
I have
it's time for the robots.
I have high expectations this week because there was some crazy crap out there.
There was a few crazy craps that I found. Yeah. First off, there's this video that's been going around all over everywhere because our friends, our good human, pro-human, pro-human defense friends at Boston Dynamics, that company that keeps making terrifying robots and assuring us they're not going to kill us, they posted another video this week.
Of a robot killing a human.
No. But I'm sure that's not far away. Here we go. I'm just going to play this because it's going to show a few things. I'm going to try to point out a few things.
There's some awesome and weird stuff in this.
Okay, first off, that is their that is the walker. That's the electric one that goes inside, and they put an arm on it, and it can open doors. Holy crap! From its face. It's got an arm on its face. This is some old footage of the Atlas walking on rocks, which does a really good job walking on rocks and balancing. And shortly here, they're going to chuck a big stone at it. Wait for it. See? Boom! And it's like... I don't care about that. But this is the really awesome part. Here we go.
Insane.
Taking a walk.
Did they put sweatpants
Taking a walk. On it? It's got shorts. They're like He's like walking in the woods. I think he needed to go pee at this point, so I had to go off in the trees. But here we go. This is the last part.
A little more pixelated, and it could be a Bigfoot video.
There you go.
It's true.
Yeah.
He's he's like jogging down this. So
they have a power cable attached to him. So that means that the poor engineer has to run behind him.
Well, obviously for those videos, they had somebody, and it's off camera, so I don't really know what it is. I assume it's someone with a backpack that's got a power pack on it, because that's referred to as the power tether. Now it's not. There's no off-board electronics that's telling this thing what to do. It's all internal as far as the thinking about balance and the movement of the legs and all that other stuff. But it does require external power, and they did mention in this talk that they are working on a model that has onboard power as well. So coming soon. This is from a conference that happened at MIT, and Fab Lab is a company that's like a consortium of people who are making stuff. This happened about 2 weeks ago.
Wait. Fab Lab?
What? Fab Lab. Yep, F-A-B-L-A-B. The link in the show notes to the entire talk. It's about an hour of really, really smart people talking about robots. To give you an example, the director of the Center of Robotics at MIT, the MIT Biometric Lab, a DARPA Robotics Challenge founder, or program manager, the founder of Boston Dynamics, and a bunch of these people are talking about various projects of robots, and some of them are really, really bizarre and crazy. And this just happened to be the one clip that got out there and went viral. But there's tons of really cool stuff in there. There are gecko robots that climb walls. There are robotic inchworms. There are all kinds of crazy stuff. Go check it out. It's awesome. I'll link it in the show notes.
Didn't the gecko make a debut?
Sorry, what?
At the space station, there was a gecko bot that was crawling on the outside of the space station.
A gecko bot. There is I don't know about a gecko bot on the space station. I know that there is a version of the Robonaut that has legs with hands, and it's designed to walk around on the outside of the space station, essentially with 4 arms. But they haven't actually done that experiment yet. Gecko on the outside of the space station.
I thought so. Okay, I could be wrong.
Yeah, I have not heard about that one. I would have known about that one if it happened, because they have to schedule time and all kinds of stuff for the space station stuff. But maybe it's something that's being worked on. Maybe it's
That could be it.
that hasn't been sent up yet, because like the spheres finally got up there. The floating, they're these round spheres with fans in them. So they're designed to work in an atmosphere, but a zero-G atmosphere. So they're designed to work inside the space station and kind of use their ducted fans to move around like you'd see in a science fiction movie. Those little floating robots that follow them around.
Practice your lightsaber with.
Yeah, I know.
Exactly. It looks very much like that, but a little bigger, and doesn't have a laser yet.
Well, what's the point? Oh yeah, good. Yet they're working on one with an onboard laser.
I just want a floating robot with a freaking laser on it.
I knew you freaking laser on it. Yes. So, yeah, the first batch of those went up. Were on I think it was the Cygnus, the one resupply mission that blew up. So they didn't make it,
Yeah.
but there were a second batch that came up, and they were actually doing those experiments this week or last week. We'll get to see what's going on with that soon. But this is terrifying nightmare fuel. So no weapons yet, but I mean, it's powerful, and it's going to run through the woods, and it's going to be silent at some point. So it's going to be scary.
Somebody needs to Photoshop in somebody going "Wah!" in front of the robot into that video.
Did you guys see the?
I imagine
there was a. Go ahead, Eve.
Well, I just imagine, with the tether and all, that when they're about to go outside, they say to it, "Walkies." Makes us all excited.
There was a parody video that I found and posted a few weeks back, or maybe it's a month ago. That it's two guys in suits with facing each other in like a box that looks like the big dog, and they're like walking through the woods. It looks just like it, and they do crazy stuff. It's pretty funny. I can post that one as well. But that's more of a making fun of robots, and another reason why they're going to kill us someday. The only other thing I have this week is an update on a story that I mentioned a few weeks back. There's a U.S. company called BattleBots, and a Japanese company called, let me see if I can pronounce this right, Seodobashi.
No.
Yeah, thanks, Bob.
No problem.
Okay, Megabots is making a prototype, large human-piloted fighting robot, and I talked about that a few weeks back, and that they had challenged the Japanese company that makes the same kind of large battle bot to a battle. They want to do a fist fight of bot to bot. Well, apparently they're starting to nail down the details of this thing, and it's starting to look like it's really going to happen. It's scheduled. The current tentative schedule is July 2016, so about a year away. They haven't decided on a venue. There's a Kickstarter that Megabots has put up to, if anybody wants to help fund the augmentation of their bot and the building of weapons for their bots. And they're currently
So if anyone
seeking,
wants
looking
to
for.
fund the destruction of humankind.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking too. I might want to see this battle, so I may put in some money. I don't know. They are currently working on finding a third party to officiate and determine the rules of the match, because they want an independent party to do that, which sounds to me like they're getting serious. Each robot will have a human driver. That is the only thing that's currently agreed upon as far as a rule. There are a bunch of other people that are involved, that are going to be involved in the Megabots building of their bot, including Mythbusters Grant Imahara, the founder of the X Prize, Peter Diamandis, IHMC Robotics, which came in second at one of the DARPA's Humanoid Robotics Challenge. So a bunch of people, smart people, are going to be involved in this, and it really looks like it's going to happen. Now, the two guys that run this American company have some really, really big ideas that I'm not sure all of it's going to happen. Like, for instance, one of their first weapons that they want to develop for this match is a giant. What would you think that they would make? Anybody? What do you think would the first weapon that they would want? I mean, like, think guns. What do you think a giant robot would do?
Spray
Paintball
acid.
gun.
Paintball gun. Well, they did a paintball like prototype demonstration at one. I think it was at Comic-Con or something like that this past year.
Napalm.
Napalm. Yeah. Well, fire is a common weapon in BattleBots. Guns, but see, they already said that the guns aren't going to be part of this battle. It's going to be a fist fight. So
How about
I was
psychological
thinking.
warfare?
No. I was thinking robot punch, because that's something like from the classic old robot movies. But apparently, one of the guys in this company doesn't think that's a very practical thing. You're gonna rocket punch him once, and then you're out of ammo. He is going the melee route, and is currently designing an 8-foot chainsaw. So
Damn.
like, one of the arms of this thing is going to be a great big 8-foot-long monster chainsaw. And I'm thinking,
Can we have Bruce Campbell drive the robot?
I don't know. Maybe the other arm's going to be the boomstick. I don't know.
Yeah.
I am psyched about this. The resurgence of BattleBots on TV. I think that this is going to be a cool thing. And wow. Yes.
Yeah.
So look
Cool.
forward to that in 2016, and as updates come, I will be talking about it on here. And there you go. Any questions? Any questions from the students about the current state of robotic death in our country? No? No. Mark Price said something about using refrigerants as BattleBots. I don't remember there being because you'd have to. I mean, in order to make metal brittle, you'd have to be really cold, right? You'd have to use something that is equally dangerous to humans. They might have rules against that kind of thing. I don't know.
Chainsaws, though, to be fair.
Aren't chainsaws?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, but it does remind me of the old Mech Warrior video games. Managing your coolant on your own robot in some versions of the game was a critical. You'd fire your laser too much and the gun would overheat, and then you'd have to vent steam to cool the robot down so you could shoot again. Kind of the opposite part of the problem. Brings back memories.
It's kind of not like that.
Yes. Kind of.
It just brings back memories
Yeah,
of many hours misspent fighting
Yes.
robots on 3D video games.
Yep. It's clear that Tim is
I
going
just
to
want it to be like Rock'em
this
Sock'em
thing.
Robot.
Unfortunately, that was a really
Giant
bad
Rock'em
movie.
Hmm.
What?
No, the Wolverine did a what was that boxing robot movie?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
I saw that in the theater.
Yeah,
Just
it was
Grim?
essentially based on
No.
Rock, Stock, and Robots. You know that, right?
Huh.
I'll be
No.
damned.
Mm.
Yep.
That's like having a movie
Real
about
Steel.
Battleship. Huh.
Real Steel.
Real
yeah, that's the
Steel.
name of it. Yeah, which I haven't seen.
I typed
I don't know,
Hugh
because-
Jackman robots into Google.
Hugh Jackman robots. Yes.
Google.
Bad.
Okay, so I'm done with my stuff, and I'm going to move on to the next. Next is Tim. Tim, tell us about what it's like to be married for 2 weeks.
It's a lot like being not married, except now I say my wife. Yeah, I got married a week, 10 days ago? 11 days ago now? Something. We have a picture in the slides. If, Brian will put that up. We did a nerd-themed wedding, which we
Hey, look at
called
that.
Farley Weiss Wedding Con. A lot of other people were in costume, although
That's
we
awesome.
were not. But we had props. I've got a Star Trek phaser, and
Well, I thought you guys were going as the little people on top of a wedding cake.
yeah, that was it.
Well, technically, I guess
Um,
that's true.
Jessica has a replica of Lea's blaster from Star Wars. Because the whole thing started as a joke that we were a mixed faith wedding. She's Star Wars and I'm Star Trek. And that got us thinking about how we like conventions and stuff. And as you can see, we had badges with lanyards on them.
Yep.
This is my
Lanyards.
badge. And my badge says
Groom.
Tim Farley, groom. Some of the other ones said, friend of groom or whatever, but some of them had funny things down there, which gave you an excuse to actually look at people's badges and hopefully learn their names and talk to them. So it was great fun, and if you go to the next slide, Bob and Eve were there, and they took a picture in the photo booth too. As you can see, Mr. Spock and R2-D2 were also there, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's healing
Whose hand is
nicely.
that? I guess is that Eve's hand?
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
That's
You
easy.
just-
That would make sense.
Well,
Yeah.
Spock wanted to do it, but he was a little stiff.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, he was a little
Yeah.
reserved.
Spock, we dubbed Spock Creepy Spock because when we got into the hotel and took him out of his box and set him up, we had him standing in the hotel room, and several people got really startled because they came in and it's this life-size thing standing off in the corner of the room, and it's like, there's a person there. And so it's like, can you hide that thing? It's really annoying me. So I stuck it in the corner of the room, and then I discovered that I could tilt it, and so there was this little sort of corner in the room, and Spock was kind of sticking his head out at an angle, and we dubbed him Creepy Spock, and it was kind of even creepier. But
It was a lot creepier.
so he shows up in a lot of the photos that way too, just sticking in from the side. But anyway, it was great fun. A number of other skeptical types were there, including former skeptic Maria and Liz and Christian from Christian Walters, who does various things, comedy podcasts and things, and a whole bunch of friends and family and whatnot. So that's why I was gone the last 2 weeks.
We met more of the Farley folk, and it turns out Tim's the runt.
We are a tall bunch.
You are not a small family.
Yeah. And we're all taller than our parents. Just, I don't know, some sort of combination. My mom's like 5'11", and my dad was 6'1", 6'0" even, but we're all well taller
That's not
than
too
that.
shabby, yeah.
So for my actual topic this week, I thought I'd talk about that paper about Wikipedia editing that's going around. There's I had the headlines up over here. Some of the headlines you may have seen: socially controversial science topics on Wikipedia draw edit wars, or trolls edit Wikipedia's politically controversial science pages. And it's all it's the typical thing where somebody writes a paper and there are bad descriptions of the paper. In this case, frankly, I've read a bunch of papers that people have written on Wikipedia, and this is not one of the good ones. This kind of looks like something somebody did on a slow weekend. Basically, they were interested. These are, as near as I can tell, I don't think they're anybody who's done any other research on Wikipedia, but they were just curious about the idea that controversial topics draw a lot of attention and get abused on Wikipedia, which of course as skeptics we know that. That's why we have the Guerrilla Skepticism Project, in part, is to keep an eye on some of these topics and fix them when people try to distort the science and stuff like that. What they basically did was picked 6 or 7 topics, 3 of which they decided were controversial, and the other 4 were non-controversial. But what was fun, that was the first thing that made me laugh about this paper, because their controversial topics were acid rain, global warming and evolution. So, okay, fine. Those are all controversial, at least in some political circles, to one degree or another.
Acid rain?
Yeah.
That's kind of the throwback, isn't it?
Yeah, it's more of a throwback, but it's folks that are politically motivated will find that controversial. But the other ones that they included, and this, being a skeptic, this made me laugh, that as the non-controversial topics, they included continental drift. There are woo-woos that will dispute that. Heliocentrism. There are woo-woos who will dispute that. General relativity. There are people with their own versions of physics, and the standard model of physics. All 7 of these topics, I can show you websites where people are spouting fringe theories about them. Mm-hmm. So, to a certain degree, that kind of threw me off at first. But basically, the gist of it was controversial topics draw more edits than non-controversial topics, which is kind of like, was this published in the journal?
Yeah.
Duh. Of course they do. Controversial, topics or interesting topics are going to draw people to them, and a certain percentage of people who land on that page are going to say, "Hey, look, there's an edit button up here," and so they're going to draw a lot of editing. And then when they started talking about what the edits were, a lot of the examples they gave were these very trivial, vandalism, like putting the word penis in there. Or somebody put the word, somebody changed the word droplets.
I'm putting penis in an article right now.
Chemistry in cloud droplets to the word blowjobs in the acid rain article. And it's like, those types of edits are really not political edits or edits that anybody has to spend any time taking out. Literally, there are robots that will take those edits out.
You're not spending time, researching blowjobs during acid rain in order to fix it.
Yeah, and there are literally robots that will, if you use any kind of profanity or certain types of punctuation, if you type things in all caps, there's all sorts of things that robots know are likely vandalism on Wikipedia, and literally in seconds the bot will come in and take it out. And mark it and say, and it'll put a little note and said, "This is a bot. If you think this is wrong, click this button." So I was not, for the coverage this paper got, I was not impressed with it as a piece of research about Wikipedia, because it was kind of, okay, duh, controversial topics draw a lot of edits, and so what is your conclusion? That was that, and interestingly enough, just to have a little bit more than a bad paper to talk about, I noticed, coincidentally enough, a woo-woo who was distorting some scientific data on Wikipedia just recently, and in typical fashion, he got himself into trouble. This particular guy decided he was a huge fan of Gary Null. Gary Null is kind of
Bogus hypothesis.
Yeah, he's got a good hypothesis and not much else.
He's not the guy that did radio. What's that song in Cars?
Oh,
Cars, yeah.
That's Gary Newman.
Sorry.
He's right next to him in the dictionary. I love that song. No, Gary Null's an alt-med cancer quack sort of, kind of like Joe Mercola or, Mike Adams, that sort of dude. Not quite as famous or as successful as them. But anyway, he's apparently done a bunch of these little documentary things where he claims this and that conspiracy theory. And this particular guy got in there and started creating articles for every single one of the things that this guy had created and cross-linking all the articles together. And someone noticed him, in part because his username on Wikipedia was Mr. Bill Truth. And there's actually a note somewhere in the depths of Wikipedia where somebody pointed out that anytime you see somebody that puts the word truth or justice or something like that in their username, that person is going to be trouble. Because they are grinding an axe the moment they get there. And sure enough, this guy was grinding an alt-med cancer cure Gary Null axe the entire time he was there, because that was all he ever edited, and got into a big dispute with a bunch of people. And I'll link to the administrative page where he got blocked because a week or over the weekend he got blocked and is now off Wikipedia permanently, because not only was he creating all these articles that were then immediately getting deleted, but then he would go back and argue with people, and then even after they initially blocked him, he went into his talk page and started starting arguments again. So they did a more to explain that, when you get blocked on Wikipedia, there's one page you can still edit, which is basically your user page, so that you have some way to talk back and say, hey, why did you block me? And he went in there and started arguing with people on his talk page after he was blocked, and they were kind of like, okay, enough. We're going to block you even off your talk page. Which is kind of the worst kind of block you can ever get on Wikipedia. So it was just an example of, it was just kind of interesting, the juxtaposition of this bad paper and then this guy getting blocked, and showing how there are plenty of procedures on Wikipedia that watch out for these people. Occasionally an article here or an article there gets out of hand, but no article like acid rain or global warming is going to go for very long. They may get a lot of edits. It may take a lot of people's time to clean this crap out, but the stuff does get cleaned out. And
you know, the option to revert just makes it so much quicker. Just make that not have happened.
That's a lot of what I do. I don't have a ton of time to create new articles on Wikipedia, but one of the ways I contribute to it these days is I poke around in my, they let you create what's called a watch list, and these are articles that you're paying attention to, and you have a hot link that says show me my watch list, and it'll show you all the recent edits of the articles you're watching, and presumably you watch articles that you know something about. So I watch a bunch of articles about here in Atlanta and computer technology topics that I'm familiar with, companies that I used to work for, a bunch of skeptic stuff, of course, and so all these things I know about, so when I see an edit to them, I have a high likelihood of knowing whether or not that edit makes any sense. And yeah, a lot of it's vandalism, and you just hit one button and take it out. And it's easy. All you got to do is just, you know, in my lunch hour, I fire up the watch list, scan down, and you after a while you learn, you know, what looks like a suspicious edit.
So, like when they have the short description, added blowjobs to acid rain, you know, right there.
Yeah. The sad part is it used to be really fun finding these kind of vandalism edits, because it's low-hanging fruit, and it's like, oh, good, I fix that, I fix that, I fix that. But the bots are getting so good at removing this stuff that most of the time you can't catch it before a bot has already reverted it.
Dumb robots taking over everything.
Yep, robots are taking over the world.
So I have this great idea for a performance art piece where I vandalize various things on Wikipedia, and you can watch them get fixed in real time. Yeah?
Yeah.
Put it on a big screen.
You could make that a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things was there was a 30 Rock episode where one of the characters was going to play Janis Joplin in a TV movie, and the smart alecky writer suggested that she go read up on Janis Joplin on Wikipedia, and she said, oh, that's a good idea. I went running down the hallway, and meanwhile the writers turned around to their computers and immediately started editing the Janis Joplin article. And within minutes of when that aired on the East Coast in the U.S., the exact same edits appeared in the Janis Joplin article on Wikipedia. Because clearly people were watching it at home and thought it was funny. It's like, oh, I'll put it in real
funny. Let's do it.
And they came out. Like, before the episode finished, the Janis Joplin article was locked. So that anonymous users couldn't edit it anymore.
Nice.
Well, I remember these were articles about the horrible things that are in Wikipedia. You can't trust it.
Right.
Was it Obama's first at his inauguration where there were stories that Senator Kennedy and Senator Byrd had died, both of whom have since died. But neither of them died. Kennedy was taken out in an ambulance, and Byrd was upset. But the thing, it was on their Wikipedia pages for like 5 minutes before either bots or back then possibly people went no.
Yep.
And then locked the pages.
Yep. Yep. Oh well.
Okie doke.
That's it. That's all I got for you.
Thanks, Tim, and congratulations, and happy birthday
Thank you.
again.
Yay.
Up next. Eve, what you getting high on?
Love. No.
No.
Yeah.
Love.
Now, I know Bob likes to play games like Scientology or North Korea. So I was thinking this week of playing a game of Shakespeare or Cheech and Chong.
Warn me.
Oh no.
But then I decided not to do Shakespeare or Cheech and Chong because it would have just been too hard. They're so hard to tell apart.
It's true.
Barely distinguishable. Because, obviously, Shakespeare was a total stoner. And it must be true because it's been on the internet a lot. It even turned up on Conan O'Brien's show, which you can see from our first slide.
Which is all
my
true.
First slide.
It's all 100% true.
Yep. So we had a joke about Shakespeare using the drugs. And the thing is, new research has shown...
I like the joke.
That's a good one.
Yeah. New research... Well, yeah, it's... And yet... Well, we'll get to it. New research has shown that Shakespeare used marijuana and tried cocaine. Except that the research isn't new, and it doesn't show those things.
Other than that, it's spot on.
Other than that, yeah. This isn't even the only time that the story's been revived. It popped up in, for instance, 2011, when the researcher behind the story wanted to dig up Shakespeare's skeleton from his grave, see if there's any hair, and test it for drugs. Now, perhaps fearing this very eventuality, Shakespeare actually put a curse on his grave, which is the next slide.
There you go.
So, which it can't. So yeah, but curse be he that moves my bones. I assume the reference to dust at the beginning is probably angel dust.
Most likely. Good friend, for Jesus' sake, forbear to dig the dust, enclose it here. Blessed be the man spares these stones, and cursed be he that...
He says stones. Is he stoned?
Stoned. Stone rocks, crack rocks.
It's clearly a D, not an S.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, of course, that's actually not the original inscription. The inscription is on the stones, but at any rate, in 2001, which is where the story really begins, or actually a little bit earlier than that, but in 2001, anthropologist Francis Thackeray and two colleagues published an article called Shakespeare, Plants, and Chemical Analysis of Early 17th Century Clay, quote-unquote, tobacco pipes from Europe. They analyzed 24 fragments of pipe bowls and pipe stems borrowed from the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust. Now, if Thackeray's goal was to point out that tobacco wasn't the only thing Englishmen were smoking in their pipes in the 17th century, that would be fun. It'd be interesting. It would add to our understanding of the culture of the time period. But that's not what he's doing. In writing after writing, I mean, also, if that's what he was doing, no one would pay attention to it. If it had nothing to do with Shakespeare, no one would really notice. But in writing after writing, Thackeray tries to show that Shakespeare used cannabis for inspiration and may have experimented with cocaine. So, what do we get in the study? In the study, the authors say, quote, on the basis of style, shape, and size, all of the pipe bowl samples probably date to the 17th century. Okay, it's already game over, basically. And here's why. First of all, archaeologists can tell amazing things from tiny bits of clay. Bob and I are fans of a show called Time Team, and you know, the archaeologists will dig up, or the diggers will dig up, the teeny tiny bit of clay. And the expert on the time period or their finds expert will look at it and say, well, it's from an amphora that's this big from the late 1st century, early 2nd century.
Like
they'll know exactly what it's shaped like.
They see
amazing
things, man. You know, like if they see a little bit of curve, they extrapolate the entire thing. They talk about how thick it is and where on the pot it's supposed to be based on its thickness, and they will tell you where the clay came from. Amazing stuff.
But in this case, there's no source cited for this dating, and it only covers the bowls, not the stems. Presumably, these stems aren't that different. And then there's the word probably. Most importantly, however, Shakespeare spent most of the 17th century dead. Not mostly dead. Dead.
Properly dead?
Completely dead. Really dead.
Is this a Grateful Dead reference?
No.
No.
He died in April of 1616. So 85% of the 17th century, he was dead. Then a lot of the fragments, including the 2 that tested positive for cocaine, come from properties that have nothing to do with Shakespeare. He didn't live there. One of them isn't even in Stratford-on-Avon. It's not even in his hometown. Oh, and the
how did they get included? How did they get included?
It's supposed to be Stratford and its environs. So they have these collections. And again, to look at the environment of the time, that's fine. But just keep in mind, nothing to do with Shakespeare. Possibly he knew about cocaine, maybe, but we have no evidence for that. And then the real kicker is the researchers said that there is, quote unquote, no unequivocal evidence for cannabis in any of the fragments, though the results for 8 of the fragments, including the 4 from Shakespeare's house, New Place, are suggestive. So they don't have proof that there's even cannabis in any of the pipes. More recently, though, Thackeray has said he's reevaluated the data and is more sure about the cannabis, but that was in an interview. He hasn't explained his reasoning, and he hasn't published the reevaluation in a peer-reviewed journal. So it's just him saying, no, yeah, it was probably cannabis. So another thing to consider, the fragments weren't excavated recently. Most have been out of the ground and on display for decades. Many have been cleaned. Some have contaminants. For instance, 3 of the fragments contain naphthalene, which is mothballs, or the main ingredient in mothballs. And presumably, no, they weren't smoking mothballs, but that was used to impede or inhibit insect life. Oh, and only 1 showed clear signs of nicotine. Okay, so tobacco wasn't the only thing they were smoking, but it does seem very odd that they were hardly smoking tobacco at all, that twice as many of the pipes have cocaine in them than nicotine. Just seems kind of weird. So to recap about the scientific side, there's absolutely no physical scientific evidence at all that Shakespeare used cannabis or cocaine. Thackeray admits that they can't attribute any of the pipes to Shakespeare, but he's still determined to show that Shakespeare used cannabis for inspiration. How? Well, literary analysis.
Oh, geez, this is going to be bad.
Yeah, I remind you, he's an anthropologist. But obviously, literary studies doesn't require, study, despite his name, literary studies, or training the way anthropology does. Anyone can do it, and here's how it works. You might want to take notes. Start with a conclusion, then troll through the literary works in question, looking for any phrase that can be forced to fit your conclusion.
Actually, I do a lot of stuff that is written like that. I've seen a lot of stuff that does do that, but yeah.
Well, actually, I suppose it's a thin line between that and providing evidence. But I'll give you an idea just how out of context some of this is. Two phrases that he's cherry-picked are invention in a noted weed and strange compounds in Sonnet 76. Now, weed, he's picked up on weed, other people have picked up on weed, but weed wasn't used to mean marijuana until 1929. So, it may mean weed to us. There doesn't seem to have meant, or weed may mean marijuana to us, but not to Shakespeare. In the context of the poem, it means familiar garment, and it's used metaphorically. In the sonnet, the speaker is asking and addressing questions about why his verse and its theme are so repetitive, or seem so repetitive. So familiar, or noted weed, familiar garment, something ordinary. Strange compounds probably refers to novel language formations such as neologisms. However, it also may refer metaphorically to the idea of compounding medications that apothecaries and physicians did. But not all medications are cocaine, so I'm really not even sure where the cocaine thing even comes from in this case. And again, it's just used metaphorically. Thackeray also talks about the 10th muse mentioned in Sonnet 38. One of his articles is called The 10th Muse, Hemp as a Source of Inspiration for Shakespearean Literature. And I haven't actually been able to get my hands on that one. Another is, that I have read, Shakespeare Hallucinogens and a 10th Muse, New Light on the Dark Lady, ? And in this, he conflates the 10th muse mentioned in the sonnet, the Dark Lady, and also the only begetter of these ensuing sonnets mentioned in the dedication to the sonnets. And this is weird. First of all, the only begetter, the 10th muse, and the Dark Lady are people, not him. They just are. Get over it.
I know.
On top of that, the dedication is signed T.T., the printer Thomas Thorpe. Although some disagree, most people assume that Shakespeare didn't write the dedication. Thorpe wrote the dedication. So the only begetter isn't something Shakespeare seems to have come up with. And although, well, another thing is the only begetter is referred to. What? No.
Is there an image?
So,
okay.
Only begetter is referred to as Mr. W.H. So it could hardly be the Dark Lady. That would be odd. And although there's a lot of debate about who Mr. W.H. is, it's possible that it's a misprint for W.S., so that the only begetter is actually referring to Shakespeare, which makes a lot of sense in the context that he is the only begetter. Regardless. The other thing is that Sonnet 38, which mentions the 10th muse, Sonnet 76, which mentions the noted weed and strange compounds, and another Thackeray favorite, Sonnet 27, which mentions a journey in my head, aren't Dark Lady sonnets anyway. According to just about everyone, those sonnets, or at least anyone sensible, those sonnets are addressed to a young man or fair youth. So even putting aside the specious cannabis claims, I want to know why Thackeray seems to be erasing the young man from the sonnets. You can't just replace one with the other without explanation, because there are some sonnets that seem to refer to both the young man and the Dark Lady, such as Sonnet 144, which is the next slide, the beginning of that. Which I can't see, but referring to two loves.
Two loves I have of comfort and despair,
despair,
which like two spirits do suggest me still, the better angel is a man right fair, the worser spirit, a woman colored ill.
Meaning dark, hence the Dark Lady. So, I mean, that's just very strange that he's sort of foisting the Dark Lady onto the young man sonnets, aside from everything else. So, anyway, what does it matter if Shakespeare used cannabis? It matters not at all. Who cares? Unless that knowledge could add insight to our understanding of his works. Unfortunately, the physical evidence proves nothing about Shakespeare, and Thackeray's literary analysis gives us more insight into the working of his mind than into Shakespeare's mind.
I want to know what he was smoking.
Yeah. I was trying to avoid saying that. Yeah.
I'll do it. I'll go there.
You ready?
Go ahead.
I'm not afraid.
Do it.
What's he smoking?
Okay.
Thanks,
now
Bob.
that you've officially said
No
it.
problem.
Yeah. Thanks,
Yep.
Bob.
My pleasure.
So was he smoking or not?
Who knows?
Huh?
There's no evidence for it.
Yeah, one way or the other.
No,
Yeah.
clearly he was smoking because that's the only way he'd be so creative, right? Because creativity requires.
There's so much wrong with this. This is so wrong on every level. This is something that's assembled from cherry-picked, isolated non-data. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And this is this guy's fantasy, and to want to dig up Shakespeare on the basis of your whim, and everybody knows that Shakespeare. Yeah?
I'm not exactly salso what the response was, but I assume he did not get permission. He has not.
I think it was this.
Yeah. He also wanted to find out the cause of Shakespeare's death, and it's like it seems to me that it's kind of unlikely that there'd be enough left to find out how he died, or even to find out anything about drug use.
Yeah.
He's been there 400 years. He wasn't embalmed. There's probably not much left other than bone.
Yeah. Is there a logical fallacy like the appeal to drug use or something like that? Or creative dope fallacy? What would you say, Bob?
The ad cannabis. Ad cannabis.
The ad cannabis fallacy.
Yeah, it should be like the some sort of 60s fallacy. Like there are a whole bunch of people who like, oh my god, The Hobbit, totally about the pot. And Tolkien was alive at the time. Went no, and people didn't care.
Yeah,
didn't matter.
Oh, Puff the Magic Dragon, totally about drugs.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bob.
Big Lebowski, totally about drugs.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Not exactly on the same level as Shakespeare, but
But yeah, it's really frustrating to see him just ransack an area of specialty he has no business. Go ahead and write it, but you just look like a crank, and everybody knows that. Why would the Earl of Oxford have been encoding references to drug use? That's what I want to know.
Right.
Yeah. You tried to make
Was
it
it
funny.
even taboo?
I did.
Yeah.
I don't think not like
Okay.
it is now. So.
Go. Yeah. I didn't think that was a big deal, or I don't know. Oh. Hey. Thanks, Eve.
Oh, actually, he suggests it's taboo because it would have been associated with witchcraft. But go ahead.
Well, there's that. Okay. As I was going to say, thanks, Eve, for that interesting take on some obviously breakthrough investigation in history. Okay. Next up is Bob.
It is
and
me.
all I have here is which town are you cleaning? And
I'm not
since
cleaning.
when are you custodian?
Well, I'm the custodian of science. That's what it is. You know, he said the English teacher. Yeah, it goes both ways, people. All right. So this week I'm going to be talking about two recent stories that are related to cleaning up science, making it sciencier. The first is a story about retractions that took place this week from Springer journals. Springer's a major publisher of scientific literature. 64 articles in 10 journals were retracted following an investigation into suspected gaming of the peer review system, according to Nature. In November, an editor-in-chief noticed abnormalities in contact info for peer reviewers. That is, that there were email addresses that looked fake, but the scholars were real. So you'd see Gmail or Yahoo accounts instead of institutional email addresses. The editor's investigation focused on articles where the authors had recommended reviewers, a practice that seems fraught with fraudiness. You know, it just, with all sorts of problems, you think, if you're allowed to recommend your reviewer. Well, you know, I mean, and I understand why that exists. Give you an example from something that I did. I published an article on James Jones, World War II veteran who wrote one good novel and a whole bunch of really awful ones. And nobody really writes about him. And I got an email from an editor of a journal. I was like the only person they could find who'd like published on James Jones recently. And so I can see that if you're working in a specialized area, yeah, you might actually have to point it out to the journal editors who might be able to do this. But so it does have some kind of practical use, but problems quickly arise. The investigations about these 64 articles, I think they were opened because of a report in Nature authored by the people who do Retraction Watch, where people had used fake email addresses to review articles. In one instance, editors found a group of 60 people that had all been reviewed 60 papers that had been reviewed or written by whoever was behind two suspicious email accounts. And it turned out that behind all of this was an engineer who was a co-author in almost all of the reviewed papers, and in this sort of peer review ring. Now, they retracted all of these articles around this guy and his alter egos, regardless of whether or not the scientists who were co-authors knew that he was doing this and was trying to game the system. These frauds have been carried out using what strikes me as a fairly slactical tool. That's slacking. That's slackish. Slacky? What's the slacktastic? And practical.
Works.
You know,
that works.
Yeah. So it's called Scholar One. It's an automated service used to facilitate the peer review process. And apparently some journals, when they employ this, they allow people to recommend reviewers. Well, like who are you gonna recommend? You're probably not going to recommend people who you know really disagree with you, because it might hurt your chances of getting published. you may recommend friends and that. So that seems like a problem in the first place. And so this is how the article by Retraction Watch put it. When a reviewer is invited to read a paper, he or she is sent an email with login information. If that communication goes to a fake email account, the recipient can sign into the system under whatever name was initially submitted with no additional identity verification. It's hard to see how you could go wrong with that. You know? Okay, so this is a huge hole. And I think that it points to some problems with the fact that this tool is being adopted suggests a couple of things, I think, about academic publishing that make it especially vulnerable to this. One is that review depends on a lot of uncompensated work, and in order to speed things up, you have to cut as many corners as possible. And also, academic publishing, or the academic track, really puts a high premium on publication. And so there's incentive for people. The payoffs for people to game the system are really quite large. Things like tenure, although not as often as it used to be. So there are pressures here. And there also seems to be and also, you want to talk about small journals, for instance, are financially under the gun. They may not have the staff to follow up on these things. So all these things are kind of feeding into the prevalence of this, or at least the use of this defective tool. Some fixes that have been suggested: to always insist on at least one independent editor-selected reviewer. So they always have an independent person. Spending more time vetting reviewers. Say, for instance, only letting someone do reviews if they have submitted a manuscript in the past. That might, serve as some sort of authentication. Maybe issuing unique ID numbers to researchers, so they just have that one number, and they have to submit that when they do a peer review. And this is the one that I think is the craziest: not letting people pick who their blind reviewers are. Just think about it. Okay, so all of these, right? And that's easier said than done, of course, for those because of the practical problems I outlined. So there was that, and now another study came out, and actually this shows that things are probably getting better when it comes to scientific publications. And this came out last week in PLOS One. It was called "Likelihood of Null Effects of Large NHLBI." That's a National Heart, Lung, Blood, I think, Institute. Likelihood of null effects of large NHLBI clinical trials has increased over time, by Robert Kaplan and Veronica Irvin. In it, they found that the likelihood of null effects of large NHLBI clinical trials has increased over time. Yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff. So yeah, what they did is that they looked at these large randomized clinical trials between 1970 and 2012. In 2000, possibly the FDA or maybe NIH Modernization Act went through, and that set up something called clinicaltrials.gov, which is a registry for clinical trials. And they looked at studies that evaluated drugs or dietary supplements for the treatment or prevention of cardiovascular disease. And to limit it, they picked studies that had over $500,000 in investment, because that type of money would guarantee that something would be published, right? As opposed to smaller amounts. So the participants were adult humans, and and the primary outcome was cardiovascular risk, disease, or death. They found 55 trials meeting these criteria, and then they looked at when they were published, before or after this act and this registry was used, and whether or not it had active or placebo comparators, or whether they're setting the bar really low at placebo or putting it against a comparable drug that's already on the market, and whether or not an industry was funding it. So those are the things they looked at. And they looked for positive, negative, or no result on the primary outcome variable and for total mortality. What they found was that 57% of the studies published before 2000 showed significant benefit of these novel interventions on primary outcome. And then after that, of the 25 that were published after 2000 that had to be registered ahead of time, only 2, that's 8%, showed significant improvement. So think about this. It went from almost 60% to about 10%, based on whether or not the procedures were outlined and constrictions were placed on the measurement and the type of study they were going to do ahead of time, right? So when you have a protocol you have to stick to, and you reduce the so-called researchers' degrees of freedom, right, the effect disappears in a pretty radical way, it looks like. And even though this is what
this is what's
55
called
studies?
science.
Yeah, I mean, this out of 55 studies, it's not a huge sampling, but the effect is enormous here. And it kind of goes with what you should expect. Industry co-sponsorship was unrelated. Pre-registration in clinical trials was strongly associated with the trend towards null findings. And the degrees of researcher freedom are things like, after the fact, picking, limiting which data you select to include in the analysis somehow, right? Or, but if you set out the outcomes ahead of time and say exactly what you're going to measure ahead of time, those little fudgings disappear.
Yep.
And a lot of stuff goes into the null category. And so it kind of makes you wonder, like, how much primary research has ended up in popular practice. I mean, I guess you could say, maybe these are preliminary studies or something. I'm not sure. I don't know that large scale. Well, it doesn't say whether or not they're what phase they are. At least not in my notes. So they could be preliminary, or they, but yeah. So things are getting better. This was a useful thing to implement, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, what I'm saying is, don't cheat. Register your trials, Brian.
What?
Yeah. No, just you. I don't trust you.
I will register my
I
trials.
don't trust people with beards.
Yeah.
As you should. I should not, I guess.
You've got a beard, so you've got to be the evil Brian. There's got to be a beardless good Brian floating around somewhere.
I think I'm just the opposite, actually. You ever see me shaved? Be careful.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Thanks, Bob.
Yep.
I'm looking to see if there are any good witty comments on Twitter. There's one comment, Jeb Card on YouTube commented a bit about Eve's story. He says something about pipes are actually pretty easy to date. Doesn't really go into it, but he just mentioned stem bore diameter. I'm assuming he knows more about this than some people do, and also
he archaeologizes.
Yeah. And he says cocaine didn't exist until later, but coca did. So there must be
Well,
some there as well.
Yeah, they do call it cocaine, but really, I guess they mean derivatives of Peruvian cocaine, by the way.
Okay.
Derivatives of the coca.
That's the good stuff. Ha!
Yeah.
Whew.
Foreign.
Woo.
New Coke. New Coke sucks.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess that's that. We're over. So let's do a wrap up. Thanks everybody for your stories. Thanks for watching, everybody. And we're gonna do this stuff and this other stuff that we always do at the end. Ready?
Yes.
Yep.
Let's do it.
Here you go.
Tim, did anyone get the trivia question? I think someone got it early on.
Yes, Mark Price got it very quickly after I asked
Mark.
it, and the question was, what famous U.S. psychic has the same birthday as me, even including the year? And the answer is Miss Cleo, which, if you remember,
Oh, that's right.
TV ads back in the 1990s, especially late at night, you couldn't avoid Miss Cleo. She was always selling her psychic wares, and then she ran into a little bit of trouble with the law, I believe, at one point. And kind of disappeared. I think she's still out there somewhere. She's just not on TV all the time now. But yep, Miss Cleo and I are the exact same age.
Wow, and I assume she's shorter than you.
I do not know the answer to that.
I've never seen you two in the same room.
I haven't either.
Oh, that's a little freaky.
As far as you know.
Also, Mark Price, who is apparently our most dedicated listener or watcher, whatever you want to call him, also was the only person to try guessing what the screens are behind me. Of course, his guesses were way off, as guesses are.
They were some good stabs, though.
Yeah, because nobody can see what the hell's behind me. That's apparently. But I have to.
I recognized what it was.
Yeah, because Tim mentioned something about this before we started the show. These are the two official trailers for The Martian. The original one and the one
Martian.
Yeah. I am so psyched about this.
I noticed that people. What's the big deal? May I ask?
It's just you haven't read the book?
No. I haven't.
Yeah.
It's a cool story about how the guy wrote the book. He published it on his website. He gave it away for free. Literally. Yeah. He only started charging $1 for it on Kindle because Kindle wouldn't let him put the ebook up for free. You have to charge at least 99 cents. Yeah. And then when he charged 99 cents, suddenly he was making a ton of money off this Kindle book. And one of the publishers noticed and said, "What is this book that came out of nowhere?" And they made him an offer and published it as a real book. And it took off like a shot, and it's a story about the near future. The premise is that we're going to Mars, we're doing a mission to Mars, and he did all the science of the story.
It's really
and
well done.
Somebody gets stranded on Mars and has to figure out how to survive long enough to get rescued. And it's very dense with science, so if you don't like math and you don't like science, you won't like this book. But if you do like science, it's really cool, and it's a funny book, and it's very exciting, and it's got lots of twists and turns in the plot. And movie studio picked it up, and it's going to come out October 2nd, and Ridley Scott's directing, and Matt Damon is playing the main character, and it looks great so far.
I was kind of iffy
and the
on
second trailer came out today.
But yeah, I was kind of iffy on Matt Damon, but from the trailers he's kind of grown on me as far as playing the main character. But I'm really looking forward to this, and I hope it.
Yeah, justice.
Book was so good.
If you look on YouTube, they set up a little fake video channel that's supposed to be viral videos from the crew in the story.
Oh yeah.
And you get to see him playing the character more than the tiny short clips you see in the trailer, and it's good.
Cool.
Yeah, it takes off on the fact that NASA does a lot of social media stuff.
Yeah. And it seems pretty consistent with some of the stuff that NASA has done for real. So, okay, so I'm going to do announcements while you guys get your books. Let's see here. There's a new Skepticality. And Eve has a segment on it. A conservative skeptic, I think, is what's referring to here. You want to say anything about that, Eve?
Yep.
It's about Shakespeare and drugs. My segment.
Okay.
Did we get an announcement about the last week's? Because I did a segment about my cat.
Oh.
We did that. We talked about that last time. 2 weeks ago. Remember? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, I guess we did, didn't we?
So,
yeah, I never watched the show, so I don't know.
Yeah.
So, Skepticality, check it out. Bob and Eve are doing stuff in the last couple weeks, so go check it out. Tim and Barbara will be speaking at DragonCon in 2 weeks. 2 weeks to DragonCon. Wow. What? I am not going to be there. Unfortunately, I am broke. No, if I would have been able to make it to Atlanta, I would have been there last week, or 10 days ago. Unfortunately. Tim will also be appearing on the Electronic Frontiers Forum and Kaleidoscope tracks in DragonCon. So, in addition to the Skeptic track,
I'm on
other
3 different tracks this year.
Wow.
Wild.
You are multi-tracked. You going to do a song too? No?
No. You do not want to hear me sing.
Then. I thought maybe you'd play a didgeridoo or something. I don't know. Or beatbox. I don't know. Can you beatbox? He's not going to beatbox, people. Who's got their first book? Who's ready? I need to volunteer.
I got one.
Go for it.
I wonder if this log will be recovered before the rest of the crew die of old age. I presume they got back to Earth all right. Guys, if you're reading this, it wasn't your fault. You did what you had to do. In your position, I would have done the same thing. I don't blame you, and I'm glad you survived.
I wonder what that is.
I wonder what that is. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah. Could you give me a sec? Go to Eve.
Okay, go to Eve. Eve, go.
Over the years, the creature has been described as having the head of a horse or cow, a body like that of a kangaroo or horse, and feet like a pig's. Some describe him with talons of an eagle, but others say he inherited his father's cloven hooves. As the legend goes, the Jersey Devil escaped from his home immediately after birth, either through an open window or up a chimney, although some claim that the young monster's first meal consisted of his 12 older siblings. Most people don't believe the devil has ever attacked a human being. In some versions of the story, the Jersey Devil is said to periodically stop to visit his mother, just to make sure that all is well with her.
Bob?
A Roman school would often be nothing more elaborate than a one-man school in a signal room or a small booth, just like a little Roman shop, open to the street and shut off merely by a curtain. From the very scanty evidence we have about Roman school life, it would seem to have been a miserable affair. However much some children today dislike their school days, there can be little doubt they would seem heavenly by comparison with the purgatory endured by many Roman children. And then a whole description of beatings.
Oh, boy. I'm trying to figure out where to start from here. Okay. I have a fair bit of O2 reserves, but not enough to take 250 liters of, not enough to make 250 liters of water. 2 high-pressure tanks at one end of the hab are my entire supply, plus the air of the hab, of course. They each contain 25 liters of liquid O2. The hab would use them only in an emergency. It has the oxygenator to balance the atmosphere. The reason the O2 tanks are here is to feed the spacesuits and the rovers. Anyway, the reserve oxygen would only be enough to take 100 liters of water. To make 100 liters of water, that would mean no EVAs for me and no emergency reserves, and it would make less than half the water I need out of the question. So he's trying to figure out how to make water. Tim, go ahead and tell everyone what our books are.
Ryan's book and my book. Oh, you can see his better than mine.
Yeah.
The Martian.
Yeah, mine is the actual hard book, but I have the.
We did not collude on that.
Yeah.
We're
both
shills
the
for
same
Big
frame of
Martian
mind.
today.
Apparently.
Big Weird.
Yeah, Big Andy Weir.
Yep. Anywhere. Follow him on Twitter and Facebook too. He's fun. Eve, what was your book?
Haunted Jersey Shore, with a picture. I believe it's an actual photograph of the Jersey Devil.
Ooh.
Ah.
And it's by Charles A. Stansfield, Jr.
I have.
Does the Jersey Devil use tanning products or?
Yeah,
Not the
in
Jersey
this
Shore
case
Devil.
it seems to be greening product, but much
Greening.
the same result. Orange green.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Bob.
F.R. Cowell's Life in Ancient Rome, and here is an image of a student being beaten at school. Also,
Wow.
school starts in 2
Wow.
weeks. I'm just saying, any prospective students who are watching, you've got it easy.
Are you planning your syllabus
Yeah,
for this?
put it in the syllabus. Yeah. I have a section on beatings.
Okay. Yes, and to cap off this episode, Nathan Miller, one of our friends of the show, just tweeted to summarize this episode. Bob needs to read The Martian.
Basically, yes. That's
So basically,
yeah.
Good. Do it. Did we cover everything? We did everything. I think we did the announcements. Okay, that's time to put the logo up. What? Stop me? No? Yes? Okay. Logo, music. Thank you, everybody, for watching this incredibly chaotic episode. Here's music. Virtual Skeptics is an independent production of OneStopHub.net. The man is myself. I see us everywhere. Doubtful News. Our logo is designed by Sarah Mayhew at sarahmayhew.com, and our theme music is by Music Hint and used with permission.
And loudly. Used very loudly.
We were not sponsored by The Martian.
We just like it.